Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name is Kento, and this channel is designed for English learners, though not exclusive for English learners because I talk about various topics using simple, clear English. The goal is to help you get a lot of input that you can understand, which I always emphasize in my other channel. So everything is kept simple and easy to follow. Now, without further delay, let me introduce today's topic. Today, I want to talk about the importance of input in learning English. As I just said in the beginning, it is very important for learning English or any other language. That's why I thought it might be a good topic for this channel. So, why is input so important? Well, input is like food for your English brain. Well, English brain is actually not an official name, but to make it easier to understand, let me use this word. As you can imagine, if you don't give enough food to your English brain, it won't grow. Or another metaphor I often use is that input is like putting food into your fridge. So if there's no food in your fridge, there's no way you can cook a meal, right? So if you don't get enough input, you won't be able to make output. I know there are a lot of people saying output is important, or you can't speak English because you are not doing a lot of output. Well, I agree. Output is important, but what I'm trying to say here is that input is as important as output, or probably more important than output, because you can't make output without getting any input, as I said just before. And according to Stephen Krashen, who is a kind of famous researcher in the field, input is essential for acquiring a language. Acquire means get something. And people acquire a language only by understanding messages, not by learning grammar or memorizing vocabulary. He made this claim about 50 years ago, and people are still discussing this topic. And there are a lot of researchers who disagree with him about whether input is enough for learning a language. They say output is also necessary. However, there's no researcher who says you don't need input. So the point is, input is very important for learning a language. Now, let me move on to the next topic, which is extensive listening and extensive reading. Extensive means wide. So, extensive listening means listen widely or listen to many kinds of things. The reason I'm talking about extensive listening and reading now is that it's a great way to get a lot of input. Actually, many researchers recommend doing extensive listening and reading. And that's exactly what I'm trying to offer here. The reason I'm making this kind of content is that extensive listening and reading have a lot of benefits. Let me explain one by one. The first benefit is that it will help you understand English as English without needing to translate into your mother language, for example, Japanese. Once you can understand English without translating, you can understand it much faster. The faster you understand English, the more input you get, and the more input you get, the more your English will improve, right? And the second benefit is it's fun. Well, of course, it depends on the person, but I assume for many people, reading or listening to something interesting is much more fun than just memorizing vocabulary or doing grammar drills. If it's fun, it's much easier to make it a habit. Also, I believe language learning should be fun because unless you are a student, nobody is forcing you to learn English, right? That means no one is making you do it. Well, there might be some people who have to learn English for their job or school, but I think if you want to be good at it, it's important that you enjoy it, at least to a certain degree. The next benefit is you learn vocabulary in contexts. There are two ways you can learn vocabulary. Just by memorizing, like using flashcards or word lists, and by reading and listening without realizing you are learning vocabulary. Both ways have advantages and disadvantages. That means good points and bad points. If you learn with flashcards, it's more time efficient, but oftentimes you don't get to learn how to use the word, and it's usually boring. On the other hand, if you learn vocabulary by reading or listening, you can see how the word is used in a context. But usually it takes more time to learn the word. So again, both ways have good and bad points. However, if you try to learn vocabulary, for example, just with flashcards, what you get is just vocabulary. If you learn by reading and listening, you also get input. And I'm repeating myself, but input is really the key to learning English. That's why I usually recommend getting a lot of input, instead of spending too much time just memorizing vocabulary. Alright, so these are the benefits of input or extensive listening and reading. Now I want to talk a little bit about one important thing when you do extensive listening and reading, and that is the level should be appropriate for you. Appropriate means it is right for you, or it matches your level. So you should read or listen to English that you can understand. If you have to pause or analyze so many times, or if there are too many words that you don't know, then it must be too difficult for you. The key here is you should use something you can understand, and I usually recommend using easy materials. I have seen so many people trying to use materials that are too difficult for them. I think this is because in school we try to read difficult materials and try to analyze and understand every detail. But what we are trying to do here is not like doing an assignment, which means homework, or reading for a test in your English class. But rather, we are trying to understand messages in English. So it should be easy. And this is exactly what I'm trying to do here. I try to use simple and clear English. I try to avoid too difficult words. I also try to speak as clearly as I can. I hope this makes sense to you and motivates you to do more extensive listening and reading. This video, or this episode, if you are listening to the podcast version, is the first episode. So I thought I needed to talk about why input is important, and also why and how this channel can help you learn English. And from the next episode, I will talk about things I like, things I do, or things I'm interested in. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye bye.